What's going on YouTube? My name is Chrono and welcome back to the PSO2 video. So today's video we're going to be going over weapons. I know it's something that a lot of people have been asking about. What 4-star weapon should I go for? What's worth investing in? So on and so forth. And because a lot of our progression videos back in base PSO2, a lot of people have been asking me just for a video like this. I wanted to make sure I got all my classes to level 20, really looked into every single weapon and try to figure out why I would make individual choices before making this video. So I apologize it took a little longer than normal, but I feel like it's going to be much more worth it overall now that we're properly researched. But before we jump into the video itself, really quick guys, my name is Chrono. I make content here on YouTube daily. Would much appreciate a subscribe as we are clawing our way up to that 10K mark by the end of the year. We're just about to hit 6K, which is super awesome. So I'm really excited and appreciate all of you guys. But enough shilling, let's jump into this. So over here in PSO2, we've got a few options of weapons. I believe it's 4 options of 4 stars that we have choices between as far as weapons go, and to be honest, the choices are pretty good. We don't have to worry too much about not having a good weapon for any individual series. Everything's got a choice, so let's talk about them. So I was thinking about different ways of doing this video itself. I know one thing that happened pretty often whenever I just talked about the weapon series, people ask like, what weapon would I go for in that series? Why would you choose certain weapons? So I'm just going to go through every single weapon type that we have access to, the potentials themselves, as well as what I would pick given I wanted to main that weapon, so on and so forth. Now, keep in mind, certain weapon choices are going to vary depending upon what your overall goal is. So I'll try to speak to those the best I can, but it's gonna be difficult to cover every single aspect of what someone can go for. So starting off with sword, iconic, our standard, we have a few different options for 4-star sword choices. So I'm going to go ahead and nip this in the bud really quick because I'm pretty sure people are going to ask about this. Is it viable to use a 3-star sword with a good fixa and with the limit breaking process, how that works out? Honestly, if you happen to get like a max fixa roll, a good 3-star sword, is it going to be worth it if you limit break it? To be honest, I think it's close. I don't think it's that good, but I think it's close to the base weapon. If you get a decent fix on any of these weapons, it's going to blow your 3-star sword out of the water. So, and the reason for it is because of base value damage. Base damage is actually really strong in NGS. So I wouldn't sleep on base damage whatsoever. Even with the potentials being very strong, even with the fixa being very strong, even a decent fixa, which they aren't that difficult to get on weapons nowadays. Level 2, level 3 is pretty common, and you can buy them off of the market. A decent fix is going to blow your 3-star sword out of the water because it's just never going to reach that base damage potential that your 4-star is going to have. So, there's merit to them, but as like an in-between, if anything else, not like as an end game. So for sword, our choices we have are the Resogear sword and the Catalia sword. People pronouncing this all kinds of different ways. I'm going to pronounce it this way. You have your different way of pronouncing it in the comments below. I mean, whatever, to each is their own. Now you know what sword I'm talking about. But the Resogear sword versus the Catalia sword. So Resogear, just so you guys are aware, the potential is potency plus 21% at level 4. Most people are going to be level 3, so we're going to talk about the level 3 potency specific, or the level 3 potential specifically. But level 3, 21% and plus 15% crit rate for 30 seconds after successful sidestep. Now, sidestep is only going to count if you step through an ability. So when your character kind of shines, when you step through something, that is a successful sidestep. That means no weapon actions, no rolls, none of that stuff. None of those things work whatsoever. Only the sidestep itself. Yes, it would be super awesome if it worked on weapon action. All of us have the same mindset behind that, but that's not how it works. But if you do get a successful sidestep, you get 15% extra crit rate for 30 seconds. The other option would be the Catalia sword. Catalia sword is going to give you 20% potency at level 3, 21 at level 4. And it increases potency at a high HP value up to a maximum of 5%. And you can get a max of 5% damage bonus just for being at max HP, which is pretty good. So as far as swords go, my choice every single day of the week is probably going to be a Catalia sword, if you're looking to just use the sword. Now, if you're looking at the multi-weapon process, now, this is something that's going to vary with everyone, depending upon what you're looking for, but to multi-weapon 2 weapons together, you have to have 2 weapons of the same category. And the thing about it is Catalia is limited on the category of weapons it has available to it. You only have so many of them. I believe you have a wand, I know you have knuckles, I believe. Do you have, no, wired lance I believe is forces. But you are limited on the actual weapons that you can use multi-weapon with. I think the other one's TMG, but you're limited on the weapons you can use with it. Now, Catalia on its own, if you're just looking to use sword, is probably easily the best choice you can make. While Resogear is pretty good with its potential, it does lose out on the fact that you don't gonna have that base 5% damage just for having max HP. And if you're not stepping through something, you lose out on damage pretty hardcore compared to the other options. So just as far as weapons go, when it comes to sword, Catalea sword every day of the week. Next, we have Partisans. Partisans have, again, Resegir. Pretty solid, we already know about its potential. And then we have Vialto Saber. The Vialto Saber is 23% potency, 24 at level 4, with offensive PP recovery plus 10% and natural PP recovery speed plus 10%. So basically, you're getting PP recovery. And keep in mind, whenever you're getting natural PP recovery, you're actually also, whenever you're getting active PP recovery, you're also getting a bit of natural PP recovery as well. So they don't really stack per se, but they still activate at the same time. While you're using PAs and while you're photon dashing, you don't get any natural PP recovery. But while you're normal attacking or standing still, you do get natural PP recovery. So that's kind of really cool. These two kind of stack with each other, making it a PP monster. And of course, also its potency is really, really high compared to Resegir. So if you're getting these sidesteps, this is definitely worth it. But in most cases, the Vialto Spear just offers more overall utility and more overall base damage. So my argument is going to go for Vialto Spear every single time, unless you're going for a very, very specific multi-weapon. In that case, you'll have to use Resegir Spear. But yeah, I don't think there's really a multi-weapon that I would care that much about that would make me go Resegir personally. Wired Lance. So Wired Lance, we have two choices, Resegir as always, and then we also have Forces. Now Forces is 23% level 3, 24% level 4, creates a barrier that provides damage resistance plus 40% when at max HP. Now the barrier, don't care that much about. It's nice to have, but it's not that big of a deal. The biggest thing is it has a fat 23% potency, and compared to Resegir, it already wins. If you're not activating Resegir's pot, if you're activating Resegir's pot pretty consistently, at least every 30 seconds, then Resegir is going to push out ahead. But not by enough for it to matter that much. So if you're focused on Wired Lance specifically, I would say go Forces. But if you're looking to multi-weapon, Resegir is not that bad if you can manage to keep the pot up. You're going to probably hear that a lot. That's pretty much going to be the standard. If you can keep the potential up and you're not looking to multi-weapon, if you're looking to multi-weapon and you can keep the potential up, Resegir is probably going to be the choice in every situation. Daggers, pretty standard. We got a Resegir and we have Forces. Forces is actually really nice, again, because of the 24% or 23% potency versus the Resegir Daggers. Resegir Daggers, honestly, you're not sidestepping much in the air, so Forces is pretty much the go-to. And the only weapon that I would really care to multi-weapon this with would be a Wired Lance, and there's also a Forces Wired Lance. So Resegir Daggers almost feel pointless, in my opinion, compared to the other options. So that's worth keeping in mind there, too. We're looking at Double Saber. Double Saber, we have Resegir Double Saber and Vialto Double Saber. Now, this one's kind of more difficult because it depends on the multi-weapon you're going for. Now, I personally used Resegir for a bit because I went for the, I don't want to say broken combination, but a really strong combination of Double Saber plus Knuckles. Knuckle normal attack and Knuckle sway are very, very good. Knuckle sway is also kind of bug where you can do 3 sways in a row right now. And Double Saber's PA, Julian Dance currently is also apparently bugged, where it's doing more damage than intended. So mixing the two of those together is insanely powerful. So if that's the combination you're going for, Resegir Saber is going to be your choice because you want to be able to mix it with your Knuckles. Knuckle normal attacks and Knuckle sway plus Double Saber PAs while maintaining Whirlwind is really, really, really strong right now. So you don't really lose out too terribly much on going for Resegir being the weaker choice when it comes to the potential. However, if you're going only Saber, Vialto Saber is actually the better choice in my opinion, because you can actually multi-weapon this with a Talus. Right now, Fighter Force is kind of the way to go for Fighter, and having the pillbox out, if you're not aware of what the pillbox is, Talus's weapon action just leaves a little floating turret behind you. You can either attack multiple targets if you have the skill for it, or it can attack a single target if you don't. You can still use the weapon action even if you're not sub-force. But the cool thing about this is you can get free damage and PP recovery while you're just attacking for just having a multi-weapon. And there's a Vialto Talus, so you're able to do that, and it's pretty powerful. So that's the combination we'd be looking at here. Let's move on to Knuckles. For Knuckles, this one is pretty much same story. If you're only using Knuckles, Catalea every single step, every single day of the week. If we are using more than just Knuckles, we're using combination weapons, Resegir is not a bad choice. It's pretty much standard fare. Now, there is worth noting that Catalina Knuckles doesn't mix with a lot of really great weapons. Say you're someone who likes to jump between playing Hunter or playing Fighter, you can mix Catalina Knuckles with Catalina Sword and only have to upgrade one weapon. So that's a pretty useful use for it itself. But to be honest, if you're only playing Knuckles, I'd go Catalina Knuckles every day of the week. No questions asked, because you're really not going to step through anything. Your Knuckle sway is extremely powerful. Even in a situation where you're taking multiple hits, you can sway twice in a row. At least you're supposed to be able to sway twice in a row. Right now you can sway 3 times in a row because it's bugged, but you can sway twice in a row and you have no problems whatsoever. So definitely Catalina every day of the week. When it comes down to rifles, now rifles are an interesting choice. Rifles really only option of dodging or of taking care of incoming damage in most cases is to step through it. So you'd think Rest of Gear rifle wouldn't be a bad choice. However, in most cases you're not stepping through a whole lot. So Forces rifle ends up being the better choice because of the base damage itself. Also, having access to that resistance isn't too bad. So Forces rifle, I want to say almost every day of the week. But it's worth noting that if you're playing Ranger main, you can do a pretty interesting combination with the Rest of Gear rifle along with your launcher, and giving yourself kind of the ultimate combination weapon. Your launcher being for single target, your rifle being for AoE, as well as being able to put up Blight Bullet and have a really, really good combination weapon. So it's worth mentioning that, but again, that's up to you individually. Rest of Gear launcher for the same reasons I said beforehand. However, the Vialta launcher is a little bit more interesting here. If you're playing Ranger and you want to make sure you have like an ultimate single target weapon, going Ranger Force or even just going Ranger Fighter and still multi-weaponing a Talus with this works a lot like the double saber did earlier that we talked about. You can basically just put up the weapon action, let it turret itself up while you're shooting off a laser, and you still regen PP back as well. So this is really, really cool. It's worth mentioning that you can do a pretty good combination with it. But if you're looking to just use the Vialta launcher or just use launcher by itself, Vialta every single day of the week. Rest of Gear is not terrible, but it's only for that one combination that I mentioned beforehand. And TMGs, basically the same thing. Honestly, I wouldn't see a situation where I would want to multi-weapon anything with TMGs outside of just making TMGs better, which would be Wired Lance, for situations where I want to get really close to my target to burst a chain trigger with point blank. And even in that situation, it's not that big a deal. I would just swap weapons, do the gap close, then swap back over and be good to go. So I would say Catalina machine guns also every day of the week. Rod. Now Rod is interesting. I didn't mention this with launcher or rifle, which I feel like is unfair, but you can do a pretty good cool combination with Forces Rod and Assault Rifle. Now, rifle doesn't really have a lot of ways of dealing with incoming damage, and playing Ranger Force is pretty common. So it's, I guess, worth mentioning. I guess we'll drop back a little bit here. Where is it? That combining a Forces rifle with a rod for the rod parry and the counter damage is pretty solid. Now, I don't know the exact numbers on it being worth it or not, but I've seen the playstyle used by a lot of really good players, and they seem to be doing really well with it. So I can see where there's a bit of merit here. So it's worth mentioning. Okay, so this choice will be a little bit more difficult, but it depends on what you're going for. Forces Rod's not a bad option. It's not a bad choice overall. Pretty good weapon to utilize. But Rest of Gear Rod does allow you to multi-weapon a Talus along with what we mentioned beforehand. Talus for just flat damage and, or flat, just a little bit of DPS, not a ton, but that PP recovery is pretty nice to have. And keep in mind, Talus is also one of Force's weapons, so that 10% damage bonus you get for using a main class weapon does still apply to when you're using Talus as well. So that's still cool. Can end up getting some pretty interesting combinations, but 100% up to you. Forces Rod is pretty common amongst Force mains specifically. Rest of Gear Talus versus Vialta Talus. A lot of the same reasons we talked about beforehand. Rest of Gear Talus for multi-weaponing, but there's a lot of really good choices to multi-weapon with Vialta Talus. If you're using Talus as your main, well, I'll be honest, Talus feels like a sub-weapon, to be honest. I'm not a sub-weapon as in it's bad, but it just goes well with so many other weapons that do something else better. It's hard to say, like, Talus is my main weapon specifically. But if you're using Talus as your main weapon, I would probably just go ahead and use a Vialta Talus. Even trying to think of anything you would multi-weapon with a Talus, everything you'd multi-weapon with a Talus, you'd multi-weapon it because it's Talus, and Talus can offer extra to that other weapon itself. But I could just not be thinking of something, so feel free in the comments, let me know if there's any multi-weapon combination that you thought of that would, heighten Talus's gameplay. And then last but not least, we would go with wands. Now, wands are kind of in a rough spot. They don't do a ton of damage itself, to be honest. Unless you're parrying something, wands damage falls off kind of hard. So What I would look at multi-weaponing, so when I'm looking at wand specifically, I would probably look at Catalea just for its raw damage, but the ability to also multi-weapon it with knuckles. Now that's kind of a weird thought process, but the reason behind it is because knuckles are so strong and Tech or Fighter is actually a pretty good combination. Even though you wouldn't get the 10% damage bonus while using knuckles for being main class weapon, while you're dealing with downs or where the target is being downed and you can like just deal extra damage itself, dropping down a G-Zonde on top of the target like uncharged so that way you can get some procs, and then just wailing on it with knuckles is actually more damage in most cases than even continuing with your wand. You can supplement wand damage by just using the drop kick over and over and over again, which you can just bind onto a button itself. You don't have to hit space in normal attack just to get it, quick hits off. But to be honest, I think Knuckles just ends up pushing out more damage for Tekker overall. So if you were looking to eke out that extra bit of damage during down phases, Catalea wants not a bad choice to be able to multi-weapon with Knuckles for that extra amount of damage. Or you could just have a Knuckle in the back to go ahead and swap to. I would still recommend it being Catalea because they're just so powerful in the first place. But as far as just using wand and you only wanted to use wand, Resegear wand, that way you could multi-weapon it with the Talus and have that extra bit of damage, or multi-weaponing a Resegear wand with a wired lance for that bit of gap closing if you really want to get on top of your target, if that's your playstyle specifically. Though wand has its own bit of gap closing, wired lance would just be for like vertical gap closing basically. And that about covers everything, guys. Video was a little bit longer than I wanted, but we wanted to make sure we covered every single weapon type, every single possible combination we could go for. And that's really about it. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to toss them into the comments below. If I missed something, please let me know. We'll go over it to the best of our abilities next time we get the chance. Or if you have any interesting weapon combos that I didn't cover, that you're like, hey dude, you're totally sleeping on this combination, feel free to let me know about it. As always, guys, a like on the video is appreciated. Absolves your half your ad block guilt. The other half is absolved by subscribing. Both are completely free and they do help me out a ton. If you want to keep up with this content as it goes live, don't forget to click on the bell icon to be notified of videos when they go up, as well as community posts, or join us over on Discord, or follow me on Twitter for notifications via those two avenues. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. As always, don't forget to comment as you're part of the end gang, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace out.